Share screen, where am I?
Terry's got to unmute herself.
I just have to share my screen. Hang on. Okay. Okay. Welcome, everyone. It's great to see you this evening, on this New Year's. We have an outstanding presentation today. We have our Bird of the Month. I just want to remind everyone again that we will be recording this Zoom session. It will be available on our website within a couple of days. Thank you to Rick Schofield. And also thank you to Rich Raphael, who is working behind the scenes actually as the host tonight and supporting everything that I am doing and making my life easier. And if you would have been here about 20 minutes ago when I nearly had a meltdown because I lost my Zoom screen and couldn't figure out how to get back on, that was an interesting moment. But anyway, I'm here and we are moving forward. All right, let's see. So you probably all know this already, so I won't go through this, but remember how to use your microphone to turn it on and off. Hopefully everybody should have it off now. If you do accidentally turn it on, please turn it off. If you have questions for either of our two presenters, Clive on Bird of the Month, or of course, Dr. Terry Root, our main speaker, please put your questions in the chat and I will be fielding those questions and asking them to both Clive and to Terry this evening. So some special announcements, and I don't know why those came up first. Okay, January Kite, we had a number of wonderful articles. We had an article on biodiversity and conservation, and of course, one of the important movements that is being pushed in our state is the 30-30 movement to conserve 30% of the land and 30% of the water areas of ocean area. And that is something, I think is something we can all get behind, I hope. Backyard activism, which is basically planting native plants in your backyard. And in fact, I'm just going to launch a quick poll and about native plants. So if you would please answer. The first question is, do you have any native plants in your yard, planted or in container spots? So if you could answer that question. Great, great. And if someone planted them there previously and you just happen to inherit them, that's fine too. They're still yours and you're keeping them alive, and that's what's important. And the second question is, do you plan on increasing the number of native plants in your yard or in container pots sometime soon? During COVID, when most of us are still kind of stuck at home most of the time, this is a great time to plant. If you can get to a native plant nursery or even have them delivered to you. And a number of the places do actually deliver native plants. All right, I'll let the poll go for a few more minutes. Be sure to read Helen Lawrence's article on backyard activism. You'll learn a lot about native plants, and you'll also learn about where you can go to see what native plants are favorable for our area. And she talks about two sites and her experience with those two sites. And she offers a lot of insight into using those two sites to find what native plants work best for us. So I'm going to end the poll. I'm just going to say the results. We have 86% or 42 people, 43 now, have plants in their yard or container pots, native plants. 4 do not, and 3 aren't sure if they're native or not native. And I know I had that confusion early on as well. And almost everyone, 43 people, plan on increasing. 7 do not, for whatever reason. But remember, native plants is what increases biodiversity in our area, promotes biodiversity, and also hopefully supports our birds, what our birds eat in our area.
Scott, can I interrupt here?
Sure.
Oh, I don't know if we have announced to the members about the wonderful project that the Palm Beach County has with IFAS about free plants, free native plants. I mean, it's a wonderful thing.
Right, and I think if you go on their website, do you have the link for that you could put that in the chat, Kristen?
Well, I think I would have to stop listening to everything that's happening tonight to do that.
Okay, well, if somebody has the link and can throw that in the chat, that would be wonderful. because it just requires you to listen to a couple of Zoom meetings, and then you get sent vouchers for native plants. So it's a wonderful opportunity to get some free native plants.
And really large ones, like, gallon pots.
Yes, yes, that's right. So these are the results, and I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to continue. Okay. Oops. End poll, stop sharing. We'll try that one more time. Okay. All right. Continuing on. We have our article on our featured speaker of the month, on our bird of the month, which Clive will be presenting. And finally, we are calling for kite writers. We need more kite writers. So if you have an inkling that you would like to write for us, if you have a story to tell, whether it's a personal experience story with birds, or maybe it's some kind of more professional look at birds from a more research standpoint, we are looking for more writers. We're looking for more content for our kite. We're looking to expand it. And you know what? Even if you have a poem about birds, please share that as well. If you go to the current kite, the address, the email of Mary Dunning, our kite editor, is there, and you can send information to her. And if you can't find that, just contact me. Okay. So the Eagle Watch program is on. The eagles have eggs in their nests, and some of them even have some young hatchlings. So if you happen to be out there and seeing some activity, that could be what you're looking at. And Purple Martin Project is on the way, is on its way now. The Purple Martin Scouts are back in our county, I've been told. And that effort hopefully will yield some huge Purple Martin population again, as we did last year. We are putting in one more Purple Martin condominium, as I like to call them, in Wakota-Hatchie. We'll be installing it soon. So they'll have additional housing this year. All told now, we have 9 properties where Audubon Everglades has either installed or advised on installing Purple Martin properties. So we are doing our part to make sure that those Purple Martins have a place to live and hatch their young when they arrive in Palm Beach County. So the Audubon Everglades Photography Club is having its January 18th meeting, the magic of bird photography, excuse me. And we'll also be having 2 workshops, one on light and composition, and another on a roundtable meeting of all AEPC members, as well as going over the rest of our calendar for the year. Again, you have to be a member of Audubon Everglades Photography Club. It only costs $10 for singles and $15 for couples. Our next meeting, AE meeting, is on February 5th. And our speaker is Simon Thompson of Ventures Birding. He's the president, who will be speaking on 10,000 great reasons to travel birding around the world. I'm looking forward to that presentation. I'm also looking forward when I can travel again. I'm sure a lot of you are as well. Okay, birding field trips. The news, as you probably suspect, is not good for the rest of this year. The Audubon Everglades board decided to cancel all events through May 31st of this year. If for some reason circumstances change and there's the possibility that we could hold some field trips again or some events again, then we will take a look at that, and we will of course let you know. But at this point, all events are canceled until May 31st, 2021. So in terms of conservation, whoops, I am so sorry. AE conservation meeting that I was scheduling for January 14th is being postponed. I'm postponing that for kind of personal / health reasons. I have some issues that need to be taken care of, nothing COVID related. On another issue, I'm hoping that the Florida legislature is going to be meeting shortly, well, another couple of months at least, but they're already up in Tallahassee, many of the lawmakers. They're starting their little caucuses. So we're asking you to contact your state lawmakers, and a wonderful way to do that is through Florida Conservation Voters. You'll see the link over there. You can just go to the Florida Conservation Voters website, and which is a wonderful group to receive emails and updates from. And the page that I'm showing you will take you to their Take Action page. And if you click on any of those, you'll be able to send a very simple pre-written email that you can edit if you want to, that will go to your specific state legislatures. So it's an easy, simple way to let your state legislatures how you feel about important issues in our state that need to be addressed. Okay, so we are asking this again. We are still looking for a corresponding secretary. As the word corresponding suggests, you will be the person corresponding between Audubon Everglades, its board, and our members. And that will be your primary responsibility to be the voice, in a sense, and speak to our members in areas that matter when they contact us, to be able to contact them back, to send them important information. There's some tech skills, but you can be taught that. But if you have an interest, please contact us, info@audubon-everglades.org. And also, this is a board position, so you will be part of our board, and you will be assisting the Audubon Everglades president in carrying out his or her duties. So any questions again tonight? Be sure to put them in the chat, which is the tab at the bottom of your screen. For all questions, whoops, sorry about that, you have for our presenters, and I will be fielding those questions and asking our presenters. So now to the time many have been waiting for. You're tired of hearing me speak, and I'm tired of speaking. So I'm going to give you Clive and Cece Pinnock, who are going to share this month's beautiful bird of the month.
All right.
Clive, you're on.
Okay. Thank you so much, Scott. And hello, everyone. Celicia and I are very, very excited about starting this year's 2021 Bird of the Month series. And we want to first of all say thank you to everyone that has participated in sending us suggestions for this. Celicia and I had been thinking about what to do or how to approach this year's Bird of the Month, and she came up with the great idea of having the members of Audubon actually suggest the species of birds that they'd like to see us cover. And so we've been having a lot of fun in doing this. And of course, the very first one we want to start out with is the Roadrunner. And we want to thank Paula Gatrell, Julie Zambori, and Ryan Keller for assisting us in making this suggestion. For me personally, it was quite a lot of fun in doing this, because having worked as a biologist in Glen Canyon National Recreation Area, I actually had the great fortune of seeing this bird a couple of times while I was out doing field work. So it was pretty cool to be able to do the work on this. The bird itself is about 2 feet in length from the tip of that very heavy, slightly down curved bill to the tip of its tail. You'll notice also the mottled coloring that it has, and that blue-black crest on its head. The coloring of the bird actually helps it to blend in very, very nicely in the desert southwestern region of the United States where it predominates. Range-wise, the bird actually extends throughout our southwestern region. Actually, about 62% of the population, which the powers that be estimates it to be breeding population to be about 1.1 million pairs, and the 62 or 63% exists here in the United States. The other 38% or so resides in Mexico. So we've got quite a few of these birds in our southwestern region. One of the exciting things that my research has pointed out is that they are making a move towards the east, and very, very close to the Mississippi River. Some of them are beginning to show up. So who knows, maybe in a few years we'll have roadrunners here in Florida. Slight chance of it, but who knows. They do reside in scrubby desert areas, places of very sparse vegetation, and other atypical areas that people are finding them in are places that are loaded with a lot of grasslands and savanna type habitats, desert, mesquite regions, and even into Northern California. Some of them are getting up to anywhere from sea level up to 10,000 feet, which is pretty amazing. So the birds are quite versatile in their habitat preferences. Pretty interesting birds. One of the interesting things that came out of this study was the vast variety of food items that these birds feed on. They do run along the ground, as their name suggests, and they spend quite a bit of time chasing around lizards, insects, frogs, toads, various forms of reptiles. But one of the interesting things I found out was that they will even leap from the ground to catch low-flying bats and birds, such as hummingbirds. They will snatch hummingbirds and bats out of the air, which is pretty interesting. If you notice in the lower left, there's a roadrunner running there with a bird, warbler, hanging upside down. It actually looks like might be a northern parula. I'm not sure, but there's this bird actually running with a warbler of some sort. They do feed on a vast array of insects, as well as other types of critters like tarantulas, centipedes, millipedes, a variety of ground-dwelling critters. They've been notorious for killing rattlesnakes, and typically what will happen is a pair of birds will circle the rattlesnake. One will act as a distractant while the other attacks the snake, pounding it in the head. Once they kill the snake, as well as any lizards or mice, any rodents, they actually will beat that animal on the ground or a nearby rock to pulverize it, and then it actually makes it easier for them to swallow. You'll see in the lower middle photograph, there's one drinking water. Of course, living in dry or very arid areas, these birds they will take the advantage of the opportunity to drink, but they actually attain most of the moisture that they need from the animals that they eat. So that's actually quite interesting, just like a lot of raptors will do from time to time. One of the things that I found interesting with the bird is, like our mockingbird, they will travel along the ground and will sometimes flare their wings out. And because of the white spots on the wings, it startles prey into moving. Of course, that gives the roadrunner the opportunity to grab them. They can run on average about 15 miles an hour. And even though they do travel very, very well on the ground, they are poor flyers. They will fly if they feel threatened by a predator, or if they obviously need to get to their nest, they will fly to that. Sometimes they can be found on fence posts and even on telephone wires, but 98% of the time, these birds are actually spotted moving along on the ground, foraging for their next meal. In regards to reproduction, it's quite interesting. The birds actually do pair for life, although each breeding season, the start of each breeding season, they reestablish the pair bond with some courtship, with the male flares around with his wings, raises his crest, spreads his tail feathers, circles around the female, cooing quite a bit. I should also mention that, as I said, cooing, it reminded me that roadrunners are actually members of the cuckoo family, which is quite interesting. Anyway, so once the birds reestablish that pair bond, the male will quite often catch some prey. As you can see here in the upper left, a lizard. He will actually, once the female positions herself, he will mount the female holding that prey item. And quite often she too will grab a hold of that prey while the male copulates with her. Once that copulation is done, the male relinquishes the prey so that the female can consume it. He then struts around with her, struts around her for a while longer, and then continues. Both birds participate in nest building. They generally will nest in a shrub anywhere from 2 feet to maybe 12 feet above ground. They very rarely will nest on the ground. More times than not, it's in a shrubby environment like cactus or a low growing tree. The female takes sticks from the male, builds a loose platform, and then the middle of that platform is built up in the softer nesting material using leaves, feathers, and even snake skin is used from time to time. And they will use dried cow dung and horse manure to place in the nest from time to time. I don't know if that's to draw flies so they can eat them or what, but they will use dried cow and horse manure from time to time in the nest. 2 to 6 white to yellowish eggs are laid, and the incubation is done for about 20 days by both male and female. The male, surprisingly, does most of the incubation. Once the eggs are hatched, these chicks are altricial compared to precocial, meaning that they need a lot of care and attention from the parents, as opposed to the waterfowl species, which we've covered last year, where being precocial, within a couple of hours, they're out of the nest and they're going. Parents take a lot of time catching food, feeding the young, brooding them while they're still in the nest. The young leave the nest after about 18 to 21 days. However, the parents continue to take care of the young for an additional 30 to 40 days after that. The birds are known to have up to 2 broods per year, but generally it's only 1. Okay. You can see from the flight pattern on the birds, I mentioned earlier that they have that mottled look. It actually helps them to blend in quite nicely. The bird that you're seeing there is actually a juvenile, because they generally tend to have more of a brownish tan color to them. But the adults generally have a little bit more dark brown, mottled black and white coloring. And again, notice the slightly down curved bill. I should mention that these birds are quite famous in the American Southwest because of folklore, but also because of cartoons. I can bet that most of us can remember years ago when we were much younger. I remember sitting with my younger brothers and sister watching the Roadrunner, Bugs Bunny Roadrunner hour, and practicing my beep beep to my little sister, which she got a huge crack out of. And so that's why we chose to end our presentation tonight with Wile E. Coyote showing what typically happens to him when he gives chase to the Roadrunner. I should mention here, in real life, the reverse happens, because Roadrunners are capable of speeds of about 15 miles an hour. However, the real coyotes can run up to about 43 miles an hour. So they are a real threat to the Roadrunners. However, in the cartoons, the Roadrunner gets away with it every time. Okay, Scott, if there are any questions, please let me know.
Okay, beep, beep. I can't wait.
I would like to say something. Clive, you
Yes.
have been spectacular. I lived in Tucson area for 14 years. I saw many, many, many road runners. I live now in Port St. Lucie. And you're making me so nostalgic. I want to go back and visit. Oh my God, they are beautiful. The
They
birds
are.
in Arizona are spectacular. I thank you so much for your presentation. You were
You're very
wonderful.
welcome. You're very welcome. Thank you guys so much.
So if you have questions, please put your questions or comments in the chat. We have a couple of comments so far. Jane Wiora says, I have had a great roadrunner in the backyard. I suspect that's not in Florida. So I think perhaps somewhere out west. I know Jane lived in Arkansas. Do they have roadrunners in Arkansas?
Yes, they do.
Okay, well, that explains it because I don't think they were here.
No, not yet.
Kay Gates says, thanks. Wonderful pictures, by the way. Mark Slifkin says, thanks, Clive and Cecilia, Celicia. God. And Deborah Smith says, I have seen a lot of them in Phoenix, Arizona and California.
Ah, yes.
So that's exciting. Any other questions for Clive about roadrunners or any other comments for Clive? Yes. Oh, Jane says she confirmed. Yes, in Arkansas.
Ah, yes.
That's where she saw the Roadrunner.
Yeah.
And it would be really exciting. I've never seen a Roadrunner myself. And like yourself, Clive, I was a big fan of that cartoon. That was one
Oh,
of my,
yes.
We all were.
yeah. So that's,
I'm going to confess something. Every once in a while, just to relish my childhood fantasies, I go back to watching the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner Hour
I got you the Looney
on
Tunes.
Cartoon Networks. Yes. And Celicia actually got me the entire DVD collection.
oh, that's
So
cool.
I will never grow up.
Well, that's good, Clive. Stay young. Ann Wiley says, my 5 years at U of A in college, I was not yet a birder, but I sure do remember the Roadrunners. So even
yes.
non-birders, Roadrunners make an impression.
Oh, yeah.
That's great. Maxine Schreiber says, thanks, Clive. Excellent as usual. We saw them in New Mexico. New Mexico is another great place to see Roadrunners. And I remember getting a picture from a friend who was in New Mexico, and it was a photo of a Roadrunner. They were asking me to identify it, and I said, yes, that's a Roadrunner. So any other questions or comments for Clive? Okay, well, I'm sure we're going to have as exciting a bird next month from Clive. I can't wait. That was a great presentation. Thank you so much, Clive.
Thank you. Beep, beep.
Beep, beep, beep. Yes, you couldn't leave on a better kind. All right, I'm going to start sharing my screen again. Let's see. Find it. Hang on. Let's see. Okay, there it is. I'm moving slowly here. Sorry, folks. Okay, bird of the month. Okay, so we have our featured program for today, and we are very fortunate to have Dr. Terry Root as our featured speaker this evening for our first program of the new year. A Princeton graduate with a doctorate in biology. Dr. Root was a professor at the University of Michigan for 14 years, and then at Stanford University for 15 years, where she currently holds emeritus status. Dr. Root has dedicated her life to studying how plants and animals are affected by climate change, and many of her 75 published research papers focus primarily on the possible mass extinction of species with global warming. Dr. Root was lead author of the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change Fourth Assessment Report, which in 2007 was co-awarded the Nobel Peace Prize with Vice President Al Gore. In addition, she was also lead author for the Third Assessment Report in 2001 and a review editor for the Fifth Assessment Report in 2014. In courageously sharing her research on threats posed by climate change, Dr. Root, along with her late husband, Steve Schneider, a Stanford professor and pioneer in communicating the many dimensions of climate change, faced repeated death threats for their efforts. Political commentator Rush Limbaugh once said that she had to be stopped. Dr. Root's tireless work on the dangers of climate change to wildlife has earned her numerous awards, including the Spirit of Defenders Award for Science by Defenders of Wildlife in 2010, and she served on the National Audubon Board of Directors from 2010 to 2016. Terry now lives in Sarasota, Florida, where she and her husband are teaching their 6-month-old puppy the joys of bird watching. I'll be curious to hear how that's going. Please feel free to applaud in living rooms, kitchens, or wherever you are watching this Zoomcast from as Audubon Everglades welcomes Dr. Terry Root to present Climate Change is Real, and it is really hurting birds and wildlife. I give you Dr. Terry Root.
Did she unmute?
Thank you very, very much. That was quite an introduction. Yeah, I thought I had made it when I finally got on Rush Limbaugh. Woohoo! But boy, that sure did make the death threats come in. Wow, that was pretty scary stuff. So, and now here we are in a pandemic in the middle of all this crazy election stuff. And now what am I doing is I'm talking to you about climate change. And I just want you to realize that climate is changing and there's not much we are doing about it. Hopefully that will change once Biden gets in, but we have got to do something about climate change or we're going to have more pandemics and we're going to have a lot of extinctions. So what I want to do today is talk to you a little bit. Oh, my screen isn't moving. Hold on a minute. There we go. Okay, so what I want to do today is talk to you, the talk is in 4 different parts. The first part is talking about climate change since before the Industrial Revolution. And when I say before, I actually mean when climate was in its natural state. You'll hear me talk about a natural state, and that's what I'm talking about is before the 1900s. But we have changed it a lot since the 1900s, and we'll talk about that a bit. Then I want to talk to you a little bit about future climate change. And I don't have a crystal ball, but a lot of scientists have gotten together to try and figure out what might be happening. And what might be happening are some different scenarios, and we'll talk about those. Then, of course, I have to talk about our birds, since birds are what got me into this business. And you can't talk about birds without talking about other species. So then I'm going to talk about the other species. And then I'm going to end on a very up note. I will guarantee you that number 1, 2, and 3 are going to make you depressed. So hold on, don't worry too much, because when I get to number 4, there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of things that we can do. If I didn't have hope, I'd just go to Disneyland. So we have a lot of things we can do and we must do, and we can do something to actually stop this. Now, the bird that I'm showing here on what I call my roadmap slides is a yellow-throated warbler. And all of the birds that are on my roadmap slides, I'll have 4 of them, are birds that will probably go extinct if we continue to allow the temperature to increase. They're in a lot of trouble. They certainly will be out of Florida because it will be much too warm for them if we allow the temperature to increase. So each of my roadmap slides has some birds that are endangered here. Okay, now let's go on and talk about climate change since the 1900s. And first of all, we need to talk about what a crazy, crazy, crazy time 2020 was. In 2020, we had a lot of really abnormal things going on. And I think that the abnormalness is going to become our new abnormal. In Death Valley, California, on August 16th in 2020, it actually got up to 130 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, think about the fact that at 104 degrees Fahrenheit, enzymes actually start denaturing. So as being humans, if it's 130 outside, we can go inside into the air conditioning. But what about all the species that are outside? They literally are sitting outside cooking. The plants are cooking and so are the animals. So we do have a lot of heat that is happening. We're having a lot of fires. This is actually a photograph. The fires underneath are a photograph of the fires that were in Australia. And the reason that I'm showing you this is because it's actually an artist's rendition of the smoke. Can you look at the smoke really carefully? And I think you can see here's one koala right here, and here's another koala. You can actually see the koalas. And what I like about this is it actually is reminding us that when the plants are burning, the animals are dying. And it is estimated that over 1 billion with a B vertebrate individuals were killed in the Australian fires. So that's talking about kangaroos, it's talking about koalas, it's talking about reptiles, it's talking about birds. There were a lot of deaths that happened, and that happens too in America. The other thing that we all know very well is on Friday, the 13th of November, 2020, we had a record, and that record was the 30th named storm in the Atlantic, and that hadn't happened before. So we are having a lot of unusual things going on. Now, this is a slide that is showing you the temperature change from the average that was before we started having industrial revolution. So this is how it's gotten warmer and warmer. These are actual data. It's getting warmer and warmer and warmer and warmer. And you can see by 2017, we were almost out to 1.5 degrees C. I'm sorry, it's in Celsius, not Fahrenheit, but that's what they gave me. So I'll let it go again. And you can see in the 18s, it's quite cool. And now it starts getting warmer and warmer and warmer. So those are the real data. That really is what's happening. Now, we know that in 1970 was the very first Earth Day. And so this is 50 years of data on this slide. And on the x-axis is year, and on the y-axis is degrees Fahrenheit. And it shows that the United States in that 20 years has warmed by 2.4 degrees Fahrenheit, which is really quite a bit. But now, what about West Palm Beach? It too has warmed over that same 50-year period. It hasn't warmed as much, but it still has warmed by 2 degrees Fahrenheit, which is quite a bit. Now, if you look at what's gone on in West Palm Beach in the winter, there has been winter warming, and the winter warming has been more extreme than the average. It's been 3.4 degrees Fahrenheit of warming for the average winter temperature in West Palm Beach in that 50 years. That is a huge increase in warming. And then if you look at what's gone on, even in the Everglades, in an area where it's fairly pristine, it still has had warming because the warming doesn't stop at the boundaries of this pristine area. Now, while we have the warming on the planet of the Earth, so the Earth is warming, but what else is happening is the water is warming. And that's something that we have to worry about in Florida, because as water warms, it expands, and as it expands, sea level goes up. And we have had warming of our oceans. And this is just showing you, the unit is zettajoules. So on the x-axis again is years. Almost all of my slides have the x-axis as being in years. And on the y-axis is in zettajoules, which is just a measurement of warmth, basically. And you can see how much the ocean has actually warmed. And it has warmed quite a bit. Now, what has actually caused that warming? What has caused that warming has to do with greenhouse gases. So this is a slide Again, on the x-axis, you have years. It's kind of weird years because it starts with now and it goes all the way back to 800,000 years ago. And they've done this by using ice cores. And they are looking at the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere. And you can see from 800,000 years ago until almost right now, it has never been above 300 parts per million. It came very close, but it's never been above 300 parts per million until now. And when I say now, I literally mean now. I looked at the Bloomberg carbon clock today to find out how much CO2 is in the atmosphere. And I think it was 3:30 this afternoon when I did this, it was 416 parts per million. So it has really, really shot up, and it is much higher than it has ever been in 800,000 years. And that's really what is driving all of that warming. So we do have warming, there is no doubt about it. So what I would like you all to do for me right now is please make a pact with me. I want you to make a pact with me to never, ever, ever, ever again say that you believe the globe is warming. It's not a belief. It's not faith. It's truth. We know that it is warming. So you don't say, I believe in global warming. You say the globe is warming. Okay? It really does make a difference. It's not a belief. So now we've talked about climate change since 1900s. Now let's talk a little bit about future climate change. And here is the red-headed woodpecker, which will no longer be seen in Florida if we go up much hotter than it is right now, in the summertime at least. Okay, now on this axis, this is my cloudy crystal ball, basically. On the y-axis, on the x-axis is years, just as I've told you before. And on the y-axis is parts per million of CO2 equivalent. And it says equivalent because it's taking into account other greenhouse gases than just CO2. So there's more greenhouse gases going on. And what the scientists have done is said, what do you think might happen up to 2100 to CO2 equivalent? Well, if we go business as usual, that's this black line right here. And you can see it's going up and up and up and up and up and up. And by 2100, it's going to be up to about 1300 or above. That's a lot. Now, when Obama was president, we came down off of that black line just a little bit. When Trump was president, we've gone up above the line a little bit, even with this year's of pandemic when we haven't been traveling as much, we still have gone above it. But this is basically business as usual. We don't change anything. Now, these are two scenarios. The blue and the green scenarios are where you have a very egalitarian trading of nations. So nations will trade secrets. So they'll help with technology. They'll help with manufacturing. They'll help. All of this helping will go on. And by doing that, what happens is we lower our CO2 equivalent significantly. And that's what we need to be doing. We actually need to be shifting from this business as usual to one of these lines, hopefully the green one, because it's lower than the blue one. The difference between those, I don't really want to get into. What I'd like to talk about, let's talk a little bit about this red line. This red line scares me a lot because what this red line is this plot was generated in 2016. And the scientists said, let's assume that God clicked her fingers and stops all greenhouse gases from going up into the atmosphere. Stops all greenhouse gases from going up in the atmosphere. Now you would expect that the greenhouse gases up in the atmosphere would start falling down, but they're not. From 2016, it continues to go up, it continues to go up, it continues to go up. it doesn't start coming down until about 2055 by itself. That's because CO2 stays in our atmosphere 1,000 years. 1,000 years, that's a long time. That's 40 generations. So what we do today is affecting your great, 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 39 greats, grandchildren. So again, what we do today greatly affects the atmosphere of our great, 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 39 greats, great grandchildren's atmospheres and their life and how they can live on the planet. So what we do today is very, very, very important. Now, in this slide, this is the same as I showed you before. It's going out, but these are not actual data. These are generated data from a model, and they fit very, very well. But what they can do now is they can go all the way out to 2100. And this is assuming we're on that black line that went out as business as usual. And what it shows is if we stay on that black line as business as usual, by 2100, we will hit 5 degrees C. We can't do that. We can't sustain that. The amount of suffering, the amount of trauma, the amount of turmoil that will cause, the amount of extinctions that will cause is astronomical. So we have to do something. We cannot stay on our business as usual curve. We just can't. And particularly that's true in Florida. Let's talk a little bit about sea level, since Florida is so close to the sea. Let's assume that the person that's looking out at the sea is 6 feet tall. In 2018, we know that sea level was 8 inches above what the sea level was in 1880. Now, in 2050, what the scientists are assuming are the low estimate is we're going to be at 19 inches and the high estimate is going to be 31 inches. Well, there's a new study out, it's brand new, and saying that the low estimate should be more like 24 inches and the high estimate should be more like 36 to 40 inches. So this is a low estimate both all the way around. Then when we talk about 2100, the low estimate is 6.5 feet and the high estimate is 9 feet. And that same study that just came out said that the low estimate for 2100 now is 9 feet. So our low estimate is going to be 9 feet. That's pretty frightening. That's really quite frightening, particularly for Florida. And then we have a study that was done now about a month and a half ago that has found that Greenland, this is a picture of Greenland, and it is showing that the scientists that have been working on Greenland ice sheet have found that we have passed the tipping point, that basically now, no matter what we do, the ice on Greenland's ice sheet is going to melt. That is 27 to 29 feet of sea level rise. 27 to 29 feet of sea level rise. If you look at Florida and say, what about 28 feet of sea level rise? That's what Florida will look like. Not good. West Palm Beach is under the sea. And actually I'm in Sarasota and I actually live out in this area, out in here. And so I'll have beachfront property. So there's going to be a lot of change. How soon will all of this happen? I really don't know. It's not going to be by 2100, but it's not going to take much more than that. There's going to be a lot of melting. What we're finding is ice is melting faster than scientists had thought that it actually was. Okay, that tells you about your future climate change. Now let's talk about our birds and other species. And this is the eastern towhee. Again, this is a species that as we go up 1 degree to 3 degrees, Audubon is saying that it's not going to be in Florida anymore in the summertime. Now, I was lucky enough with my late husband to go to the North Pole in 1994. And I took this picture. There was a lot of ice around, and a lot of polar bears. And the polar bears were out on the ice and they would kill seals like they've killed this seal here. And they would fling this seal all around to get it, all the pieces off of it. And so there would be blood and guts flung all over the ice. And this little bird right here that you can see right here is the ivory gull. And it would go and clean up what it would eat would be all this blood and guts that was thrown all over the ice. Well, there's no ice, so the polar bears aren't going out and killing the seals. That's good for seals, but it's bad for the polar bears and it's horribly bad for the ivory gull. I'm 66, almost 67, and I know that, well, I don't know that, but I will bet $1 million that before I die a natural death, that the ivory gull will be extinct. It is plummeting very, very rapidly now. And that is because of us. We are causing the extinction of species. And I'm not sure that's really fair, but we'll talk more about that. Now, what else is happening as you are warming, things are happening earlier in the spring. So again, we have years on the x-axis, and on the y-axis is a date index, because these are data that were collected from North America and also from Europe. And so we can't put an actual date on it. But what they did was for the 1960 census, whatever that was, they set that as 0. And then they plotted out to see how fast birds were coming in the spring, when they were actually arriving. And you can see that they're coming earlier and earlier and earlier and earlier and earlier and earlier. So they're coming about 2 weeks to 2.5 weeks earlier now than they did in 1960s. So we know things are happening earlier in the springtime. Spring is coming earlier. The cherry blossoms are blooming earlier in Washington, D.C. So a lot of things are changing a lot faster in the spring. The other thing that's happening with birds is they're changing their ranges. Their ranges are shifting. They're going up in elevation, and they're also going toward the poles where it's cooler. If they're in the oceans, they're going deeper in the oceans where it's cooler. Now, a professor of mine at Princeton in 1985 did a census on a mountain in Peru. And he found that the common scale-backed antbird went up to about 800 meters here. The versicolored barbet went up to a little bit above 1,200 meters. And the variable antshrike was up at the top. Now, he did such a good job of knowing where this transect was that it was done now just recently in 2017. And we have found that the common scale-backed antbird has shifted from 800 meters and gone up to about 1,100 meters. And the versicolored barbet has shifted and gone all the way up to the top. And the variable antshrike is not there anymore. So it's been extirpated from that mountaintop. This is happening on mountaintops all over the globe, and it is causing extinctions of species that are occurring on the tops of these mountains. Now, the other thing that has happened over our lifetime is what we found in 2015, this study was done, and we found that about 3 billion individual birds, not species, but individual birds, are lost, are gone. They're not there anymore. So since 1970, the birds have disappeared. They have been killed. So there are fewer birds out there. Now, this is equivalent to saying 1 in every 4 bird that you saw in 1970s is gone today. So that's a lot of birds that have disappeared. And that's a real concern. Is this due to climate change? Partly. Is it due to the destruction of habitat? That's the main cause. Because think about if you're a bird and you're trying to cross this, or if you're a butterfly and trying to cross something that looks like this, how do you get across that? That's pretty tough to do. So what we need to be doing is we need to be helping with habitat destruction. And the way to do that is exactly what Scott was saying earlier, is you have to be planting native plants. Please, 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 Florida does not ever need another Schefflera planted outside. We need to have the plants out there that are native plants. And we can all be planting native plants because the birds really, really need them. Because if we don't have the birds, if we don't have the native plants, they're not going to be able to get across areas like this. The only way they can do that is to have native plants that will have the species on them for them to eat. Now that has to do with what happened with the habitat destruction primarily, but Audubon has also done a study on looking at climate change, and that is called Survival by Degrees. And what they found was 389 birds are on the brink of extinction if we continue to have climate change increasing the way we are. Now, when we're talking about 389 birds being on the brink, that's 2/3 of all North American birds are on the brink. That's a very sobering thought. And this is not a trivial study. The study looked at over 140 million observations. These are observations that go all the way from up in Alaska down to the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. So there is a lot of work that has gone into this. It is a very, very elegant study. What they did was they looked at climate, they looked at human land use. Somebody has their microphone turned on. Can you mute your microphone, please? Okay, they looked at vegetation, and they also looked at what I call group-specific variables. So if you have a bird that is a water bird, then they looked at water. So that's what this is a picture of, is looking at all the water courses in the area. So if you had a desert bird, they'd be looking at the deserts, that type of thing. So they looked at all of this, and they were able to look at 1 kilometer squared resolution. So what you can do is go, and I urge you to do this, go to audubon.org/climate/survival by degrees and put in your zip code. And you put in your zip code, and it will tell you about your birds and how climate change is going to affect the birds in your area. Now, I did this, and so what I want to do is show you an example. Here's an example for the yellow-throated warbler. This is a bird that is basically all over Florida. And this is its current range, where it actually occurs right now. Now, what Audubon did was say, let's project out into the future and say that the future goes up by 3 degrees C, which is the same as 5.4 degrees Fahrenheit above natural. If that happens, the red area is where the bird will no longer be in the summertime. The orange area is where it will remain, and the blue area is where it will move into. So what this tells us is, what Audubon found is if we go up 3 degrees C above natural, we will lose 92% of the habitat of the range of the yellow-throated warbler. 8% will stay stable, and it will gain by 19%. Now, what Audubon wanted to do was to show we really don't want to go that hot. We want to stay much cooler. So then they said, let's, instead of looking at a projection of 3 degrees C, let's look at a projection of 1.5 degrees. And that's what I'm showing here. And you can see it still is not going to be in Florida, but it's going to be in a lot of other different areas that it hadn't been before. So instead of losing 98%, we're only losing 53% of its range. 48% of its range is going to be stable, and we're going to gain 15%. So this is a much better scenario than going up 3 degrees. So now what else you can do on Audubon's website is you can find out that there are actually 8 very highly vulnerable summer species in Palm Beach County if we go up 3 degrees C. Those species are the snail kite, the boat-tailed grackle, fish crow, red-headed woodpecker, brown thrasher,
Sit on the couch.
yellow-throated warbler, the eastern towhee, and the gray kingbird. Now, if we only go up 1.5 degrees above natural, there's only 5 highly vulnerable species. Still the snail kite. Now we have the least tern, and the least tern is because of sea level rise primarily. Fish crow, still the yellow-throated warbler, the kingbird. But now if what we do is we look at Florida in general, not just your county, let's look at Florida in general. There's actually 13, not just 8, but 13 highly vulnerable summer species if we go up 3 degrees. So it includes all 8 of the ones that are occurring in your area. And now we also have the field sparrow, the brown-headed nuthatch, the I don't remember which. The wood thrush, there we go, the wood thrush. And this is a managed population of whooping cranes. I didn't even know we had a managed population of whooping cranes in Florida, but we do. But it will be threatened, and that's primarily because of sea level rise. And then my wonderful pine warblers that I have in my backyard right now. So if we go up 3 degrees, that's what's going to happen in all of Florida. All those birds in the summertime will no longer be in Florida. If we only go up 1.5 degrees C, we have 7 highly vulnerable species. Those include the 5 that I talked about for your area. And then that also includes, again, the whooping crane and the brown-headed nuthatch. So it really does behoove us to not go as warm as 3 degrees above natural. We want to stay as low as possible. And the IPCC has said we really want to stay at around 1.5 degrees C. And we'll talk about that in a lot more in a little bit. But we also have to worry about extinction. Extinction is real, and it happens all the time. In biology, we have a thing we call background extinction rate. And what that is you lose less than 1 species in 1,000 species over 1,000 years. So think of the fact that you have an island and you have 1,000 species on that island. Over 1,000 years, background extinction rate you will lose less than 1 species. Now let's talk about what the actual current extinction rate is. Current extinction rate is about 1 species in 10 species, not 1,000 species, over a little less than 100 years, not 1,000 years. So the extinction rate right now is 3 orders of magnitude faster than background rate. So I used to say, I've had to change this slide many times, and I used to say that we're right at the brink of the 6th mass extinction event. We're not at the brink anymore, folks. we're actually in the 6th mass extinction rate. We are, sorry, the 6th mass extinction. We really are having very high extinction rates, and you can't get around it. We are in that 6th mass extinction. Now, the IPCC in 2007 for the 4th assessment report came out and said, if we go up, if the overall average temperature of the globe goes up by 2 degrees C above natural, which is 3.6 degrees above Fahrenheit, above natural, we could lose about 500,000 species to extinction. And if we go up 4 degrees Celsius above natural, 7.2 degrees Fahrenheit above natural, we could lose 1 million. Well, we know that there are 2 million species on the planet. Those are the species we're talking about. So if we go up 2 degrees above natural, we could lose 1/4 of the species. If we go up 4 degrees above natural, we could lose half the species on the planet. And we know there's more than 2 million species on the planet. Certainly there are, but we only know the names of 2 million of them. We've given names to 2 million of them. Those are the ones we're talking about. Now, I guarantee you that in half those species that go extinct, there are going to be species that we need, humans need, to stay alive. We absolutely will have to have them, and they'll be gone. And I will bet that there are several if we lose 1/4 of the species to extinction. And then we have the other question that I like to ask is, what gives us, the human race, one species, the right to cause the extinction of that many species? I think there's something morally wrong with that. It's really tough. And the snail kite will undoubtedly be one of those species that we lose. So now I warned you that section 1, 2, and 3 were going to be kind of depressing of this talk. But now I come to the 4th part. And this is the really good part about this, because it tells us what we all can do, and it really will make a big, big difference. The main thing that we have to have, we absolutely have to have, is a paradigm shift. And we can do that. We have had numerous paradigm shifts. Here's an example of one. This was for World War I, where it says, food will win the war. We observe meatless days, wheatless days, and porkless days. That was a paradigm shift. Before this, before World War I, everybody had meat, everybody had wheat, and everybody had pork. And they decided not to do that, to save the meat and the wheat and the pork for the boys over there. There was a paradigm shift. We did it. We had political will, and we did it. Here's another example. Blow in her face and she'll follow you anywhere. This is an example of not one, but 2 paradigm shifts. No longer is it okay for people to smoke in public. And I guarantee you, if a man came up to me and blew smoke in my face, I sure as hell wouldn't follow him anywhere. So there's been 2 shifts that have gone on there. We have had paradigm shifts in the past. We can have paradigm shifts in the future. All we have to do is do it, want to do it, and we can do it. So that's the thing that is really exciting. We need to have the political will, and we can actually do it. Now, this is a slide that I think is the most uplifting of all the slides that I have. On the x-axis is location by state, except for District of Columbia, so that's Washington, D.C. And on the y-axis here is tons of CO2 emitted per person. And this is in 2016. I'm sorry that the data are old, but in all honesty, I have looked and looked and looked, and there is no new data yet out for this type of thing. So I have to have it for 2016. Anyway, what I want to show you is, let's look at the United States, which is right here in the middle. So there's some states that are lower than that, and there's some states that are higher than that. The ones that are lower, look at how much lower they are. DC, New York, California. I used to be from California when I taught at Stanford, so I used to be able to say, being a Californian, I've never met a regulation I don't love. So California understands what needs to be done, and they are willing to do it. And their CO2 emissions per capita are very low. This actually has not been true for the last 2 years, and that's because of the fires. Because when you have a fire, the CO2 that is put into the atmosphere is quite dramatic. But then we have Florida, which is a little bit higher than California, but it is lower than the overall average. So again, Floridians know what to do to not have so much CO2 in the atmosphere. And then we switch over to the other side, Mississippi, West Virginia, North Dakota, and Wyoming. Holy cow! Look at the difference between New York or DC and Wyoming. Wyoming's doing something wrong. California, New York, DC, Florida, we're all doing something right. So what's going on in Wyoming is that they're getting almost, not at this time, but very close, almost 100% of their electricity is coming from coal. And coal puts a lot of CO2 in the environment. So the point of this slide is that we know what to do. We just have to do it. That's it. We just have to do it. And we can. That's the whole bottom line. We can. Now, the scientists with the IPCC were getting very concerned that the world wasn't listening to what we were saying. So they came out in October of 2018 with a recipe of saying what needs to happen. We need to have big, big changes because we must limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees C, which is 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit above natural. So now in 2010, we had less than 40 gigatons of CO2 emitted per year. 2017, oopsie, we went the wrong way. We're still getting higher. What the IPCC said was by 2030, which is 9 years away from right now, is what we have to do is we have to be at 45% of what the emissions were in 2010. We have to cut our emissions down to 45% of what it was in 2010. And then by 2050, just exactly like Biden has said, is we have to be at zero emissions. Now that is going to be very hard because we are a plastic world. We live in a plastic world. We do everything with plastic. And for every pound of plastic made, plastic comes from fossil fuels, from every pound of plastic that is made, 6 pounds of CO2 go up into the atmosphere. So to be at zero by 2050 is going to be a hard thing to do. So we're going to have some technology, but we can do it. And I truly, truly believe that the climate change group that Biden has gotten together is able to get us on the right trajectory because we've got to be at 45% of the emissions that we had in 2010 by 2030. That's a tall order, but we can do it. Now, one of the ways we can do this is we've got to know what we've got to be fighting. So here it shows the greenhouse gas sources in the United States by sector. So we have 28% going up due to generation of electricity. That's all. 29% is coming from transportation. 9% is coming from agriculture, primarily from cattle and dairy cows. 12% is coming from commercial and residential, and 22% is coming from industry. 8 of that is coming from the generation of cement. And not having cement would be basically impossible for us. So we have to figure out some way to make cement that doesn't put out so much CO2. And they're coming up with ways to do that. But what the IPCC said was, let's look at each of these sectors and come up with what we need to have in order to meet our goals that need to be met. So they said for the electricity market, which was 28% of the US budget, the percent of non-biomass renewables, so this is solar, wind, geothermal, hydro, and nuclear. By 2030, we need to have about 50% of our non-biomass renewables be our electricity being generated by non-biomass renewables. By 2050, that amount needs to be up to about 75%. Can we do that? In the US, we can't. We can't do it. We can't make it. I showed this slide at a meeting with a bunch of wind turbine companies, and there was about 400 people in the audience, and they all erupted laughing when I showed this slide. And finally, somebody in the back who was a friend of mine said, Terry, that's impossible in America. The point is, this is global, and on a global scale, we do think we can make it. But we have got to go back, and the US needs to take leadership in all of this. And we can indeed have a lot more wind turbines, a lot more solar. Florida should be having solar everywhere. They are so far behind the curve. We have solar on our house, and we just got fought by Florida Power and Light right and left. They are really trying hard not to have solar on houses. It's a backwards way of looking at things, and the US needs to take the leadership role again. Again, this is part of the paradigm shift. Now, I was on the National Audubon Board for 9 years, and people would say, Terry, how can you say you have wind turbines? You can't have wind turbines, they kill birds. Well, the people who have told us that wind turbines kill birds are the oil, the gas, and the coal companies. Because when you actually do the studies, the passerines, the small birds that are killed by turbines, those actual numbers are 3.7 small birds killed per turbine per year. Not per month, not per day, but per year. 3.7 individuals killed per turbine per year. As we have more turbines out there, we will have more birds killed. I understand that. But if we don't have them out there, we're talking about complete extinction of species. And turbines are killing just individuals. So what actually is killing our birds? Cats. Cats are what are killing our birds by orders of magnitude more, 4 orders of magnitude more. So if you look at this plot, on the bottom are things that are actually killing the birds. Cats are over here at 2.4 billion with a B. Birds are killed per year by cats. We have 80 million feral cats in the US and 80 million pet cats in the US. Now, a lot of those pet cats go outside. Now, if you have a cat, that's wonderful, keep it inside. If you can't keep it inside, only allow it to go out during the day. Please, please bring it in during the night, because it's at the nighttime when they kill the birds. So we need to do something about cats. I talked to the CEO of National Audubon saying we need to take on cats. And he looked at me like I was absolutely going absolutely nuts, crazy, because we can't do that. But look at this, turbines, which is over here, all the way over on the right, are only killing 234,000 birds per year. So there are electrocutions, they're running into towers, they're running into power lines, automobiles are hitting them, birds are hitting windows, but cats are the big problem. So we can have wind turbines. We need to have wind turbines, and Audubon is very strongly behind having turbines because we have learned where to put the turbines so it doesn't kill the birds. We know we have done this for years. When we first put them up, we put them in the wrong place, but now we know what to do and we can do it right. Now, another sector that we have to take on is a transportation sector. We need to have low emission vehicles. So by 2020, the IPCC said we needed to have 5% of the fleet be low emission vehicles. Did we make it? Absolutely. Even in America, we made it. So this was a good thing. And Tesla, thank heaven for Tesla, or we wouldn't have made it. By 2050, can we have between 35 and 65%? Absolutely, we can. We just have to do it. So what you all need to do now is make a pact with me that the next car you buy, you plug in. We all can do that. We have an electric car, a total electric car. There are half and half, but we have a complete electric car, and we absolutely love it. I love coming up to stoplights and going, the car next to me, the kids going zoom, 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 zoom. And then as soon as it turns red, I take off and I beat them a whole lot easier than that. But anyway, I love my electric car. The other thing we need to be doing is we need to be getting rid of the beef. We need to be getting rid of cattle. So we need to be switching over to plant-based diet. And that means dairy also. And that's a hard thing to do. Okay, so now here are all the things that we need to be addressing. Now, what we all need to be doing. What is that? For electricity, we all need to be supporting renewables. We need to be supporting solar rooftops. We need to be supporting wind farms. Whenever you're going to be buying an appliance, make sure that you buy an appliance that is Energy Star and highly rated. If you have any incandescent light bulbs, throw them away. And we had incandescent light bulbs. I was horrified. Our Christmas tree lights were incandescent light bulbs. We switched them out. We don't have incandescent light bulbs anymore. Okay, so that's what we can do for electricity. For transportation, electric vehicles. So we can our next vehicle that we buy plugs in. And if it plugs in, you should be getting at least 30 to 50 miles just on electricity. And you can do that. It's possible. You can do that. Now, what about agriculture? We can have things called meatless Mondays. When I was a kid, my grandmother was a Roman Catholic, and she used to have fish every Friday. I hated going and seeing her on Fridays because I didn't like fish. But anyway, if they could do fish on Fridays, we can do meatless Mondays, and maybe meatless Wednesdays, and maybe meatless Saturdays. Or I have a friend who picks one meal a day and has no meat and no dairy at that meal. That's a way to do it. But now, if you absolutely have to have beef, please eat beef that is not causing the demise of our grassland birds. This company called BlueNestBeef.com is a company that has been certified by National Audubon to be raising beef that allows grassland birds to be surviving sustainably. And this is something that we all can be doing, especially during the pandemic. You don't want to go to the grocery store. Go to Blue Nest Beef and get your beef. They also have chicken. Get your beef from them. Yes, it's expensive, but isn't it more expensive to lose our birds? I think it is. So we can do that. All of us can do that. Now, what about commercial and residential? What we should be doing is making sure that our county commissioners and our city commissioners no longer allow buildings to be built that are not zero emission buildings. We have the knowledge, we have the technology, we know how to build buildings that are zero emission buildings. Are they more expensive? Yes, they are more expensive. Do we need to have them? Yes, we need to have them. If not, we are going to have the extinction of species, and we are going to have environmental refugees all over our planet, and it is going to be outrageously difficult for us to live. We can do this. Now, that brings us to industry. And industry is a really tough one to crack because, as I said, there's cement in there, there's manufacturing steel. That's really tough. So what we need to be doing is basically we need to be scrubbing out the CO2 that is in the atmosphere out of the atmosphere. And the way to do that is to plant trees. I know that sounds simple. I know that sounds crazy, but it is really absolutely necessary. We need to be planting trees, but we need to be planting trees in a responsible manner. And there are lots of organizations out there that say they'll take your money and plant trees, and they're doing it wrong. They're planting all one species. They're planting the wrong species. I've done a lot of work, and there is this one place called cooleffect.org. And I just went on their web today, and they have estimated that it costs about $183 to offset the average American carbon footprint. That's all it takes. So what did I give for Christmas presents? I gave carbon-free trees or carbon-free credits to my different people on my Christmas list, so that now their carbon is completely negated by the trees that are planted by cooleffect.org. It's a great thing to do. It's a great company. I strongly refer people to it. I have no connection with it at all. I just know that it's a very good place to do it. So I bet almost all of us remember where we were the very first time you saw this picture. This was on December 24th in 1968, and it's called Earthrise. And I can remember looking at that the first time and getting goosebumps and saying, oh my God, look how fragile the world looks. And it is fragile. And folks, it's the only world we've got, and we have got to take care of it. But the point is, we can take care of it. We know what to do. We know how to change it. We just need to have the political will to do it, and we can. We can, we must, and we will. And with that, I want to thank you very much for listening. And here's my information about how you can get in touch with me if you would like to. So now I need to unshare my screen, and I'm not sure how to do that. Let's see. I do that. There. Okay, did that work? Yeah.
That was great. Thank you so much, Terry. So if you have questions, there's a lot of comments. You've definitely roused people's passions.
Good.
But if you have questions, please type those in the chat, and I'll start going down and saying what some of you have said or asked. And also, I typed a bunch of links into the chat, many of them related to what Terry was talking about. I gave you the link to contact your Palm Beach County commissioners to let them know to enforce structures that are zero emitting, as well as a few other links. One for Blue Nest Beef, I gave that link to you so you could go there and find out more about using beef that doesn't kill birds, which is of course important. And there was one more also. But anyway, let me go over some of the comments and questions here that we got from everybody. Fred Kwan says, it seems the primary driver for climate change is the growing human population, which drives environmental destruction.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And for a while, I used to put in information about population growth, And I found that what happened was that focused all people to look at that point, and we didn't look at what was going on with climate change. So population growth is the biggest problem. But how do we, it's kind of like getting the Audubon Society to handle cats. How do you take on the population problem? I don't know, but I do know how we can take on the climate problem. But yes, having fewer children, I made the decision not to have children. A lot of people have done that. A lot of my students are not having children. So it is an issue. Yes, thanks, Scott.
Fred Kwan also says that energy usage is due to mining in the high CO2 states. I think that you pointed out like Wyoming, and I know Utah is another high mining. Right. So I suspect that's part of it. Again, Fred's really active here. Fred's CO2 generation is dependent on energy usage per capita. We need to limit population, not just in the US, but in the world. So again, back to your statement about limiting population. Anne Wiley said that Michael Moore's Planet of the Humans, an excellent documentary on how green energy is not so green at times.
At times, that is true, right? There are problems, but the point is that we're learning more and more all the time, and we have got to get the greenhouse gas emissions stopped. We just can't do. We don't have a choice, so we've got to do that.
Rich Raphael, our host, is helping me tonight. There's a city of Lake Worth Beach, which has its own utility plant, has established a huge solar field on top of a defunct landfill and is continuing to grow it. Plus, we are unique in that we have access to the Gulf Stream and are working with research to find ways to harness the energy from the Gulf Stream as an alternative source of energy.
Fabulous. I didn't know that was happening. I know that FPL is putting solar farms out in pristine areas, and it really is hard for me because we need those pristine areas, and we have all these roofs that we can put solar panels on, and we need to be putting the solar panels on the roofs. But anyway,
we need to be planting native plants in those pristine areas, or not cutting down what's there.
Right.
Wiley, in response to what you said about how cats kill birds, and we all know that, Palm Beach County Commission has voted in the no-kill practice of re-abandoning all feral cats into the environment. Changes need to start with the commissioners. And so, yes, so all commissioners, get in touch with your county commissioners and let them know that we need to do something about the cats in our particularly our public parks and that are roaming our county. How do we, Fred Kwan says, how do we legitimately limit human population across the planet? How do we prevent the third world from using more energy than they all want when they all want our lifestyle?
That's the tough one, because it has to deal with how much people are using, and that's a really tough one. We don't have the right to say no, you can't do it, because we've already done it. So, but there are ways to do this. The IPCC has come through and explained it all. This report that was put out in October of 2018. I urge you to go and read the executive summary, and it has some really good suggestions in that. It really is quite good, and it is quite readable.
Please clarify how we can pitch that planting trees balances out the industry.
I used to show a slide of the Mauna Loa curve that shows CO2, and in the summertime, the curve is down, and in the wintertime, it's up. It's actually a sawtooth. It is a sawtooth curve, and you can actually see, I should have shown it. You can actually see how plants pull the CO2 out of the atmosphere. We don't really have another way of pulling CO2 out of the atmosphere. The different technologies that they've done use more energy than they really should. So the real way that we have it is the plants actually are pulling it down. I'm not sure I'm answering the question. Is that, Scott?
I think it kind of works for me. I guess it's a tough question to answer. Also, it's how do we make that pitch? I guess we'd have to go get some statistics.
Yeah, I should have, I'm sorry, I should have put the slide in that showed if you can go and look up the Mauna Loa CO2 curve, it will show you, it's a sawtooth curve, and it is very obvious how it changes in the spring and in the fall. It really is quite striking.
Joanne Crilly asked a little bit of a personal question. Terry, what make of car did you choose?
Well, my husband is 6'2". I'm 5'11". We were going to get a Tesla. We went and sat in the Tesla Y, and I couldn't get in. my legs have an inseam of 36, and I couldn't get it underneath the steering wheel. And the guy came and said, "Oh, you just don't have the steering wheel up high enough." And he came over and he pushed the button. He says, "Oh, you do." So anyway, we didn't go with Tesla because I didn't fit. Literally, that is literally why. So we went and we got the new Nissan Leaf that gets 234 miles.
Wow.
And we had to drive from Sarasota to Vero Beach to pick up our puppy. And we took the electric car and we stopped and charged it on the way back. And it was easy as pie, and it was wonderful. And here we have an 8-week-old puppy while we're charging this thing, and we had so much fun playing with the puppy while we were charging. So it's really, driving electric cars are coming easier and easier and easier. So
that's great, and I hope hopefully more people will be buying them. Kay Gates, who's a longtime activist in our area, says, "I'd like to lobby local commissions who require solar on roofs of a significant size."
yes, we need to have solar on roofs. Again, I came from California. Everybody was encouraged to put solar on your roof. Out here, we're not encouraged. We're discouraged. When we put our solar panels on, FPL had 6 weeks to connect us to the grid, and they did it in 5 weeks and 6 days. they were really, really, really nasty. So they don't want solar on rooftops, and it just doesn't make any sense. And I really don't invest in Florida Power and Light. If you have stock in them, get rid of it.
Good
We're the
point.
Sunshine State.
So Joanna Crilly says, "Terry, thanks for a super presentation." Fred Wax says, "Thank you, stay well." Amazing presentation. Chris Golia says, "How fortunate we are to learn from you." Luann Dillon says, "Thank you for a wonderful and inspiring presentation." Deborah Smith, "Great presentation, very informative." Fred Kwan, "Thank you very much for your presentation." Another question, by the way, is Audubon aware that Solar United Neighbors has new solar co-op opening? First virtual meeting, January 12th and 27th. I will send flyer if Audubon will share. I will share flyer. So if you send it, Kay, I will share that flyer.
By doing the co-op like you're talking about, that's how we got our panels on our roof. About 3 years before the co-op came out, I priced it, and it was way too expensive. The co-op came out, and it was about 2/3, about 2/3 what it was to begin with, and then it came down from there, and it was fabulous. So that's how we did it. We did it through the co-op.
So I will definitely post that, and hopefully that will inspire some people to get a solar roof. Any hope for our plastic problem?
Oh, invite me back and I'll give my plastic talk. That's a tough talk to give and a tough talk to hear. But yes, there are things we can do. But my bottom line with plastic is be aware of when you're using plastic. When you go to the store to buy eggs, please buy it in a paper
Cardboard
carton. Yeah, don't buy it in styrofoam or plastic. You have a choice, so make the right choice. So try not to use one-use plastics. Please try.
Yeah, one of the key words I've always heard is just refuse plastics. Refuse to use as much as you can.
Right.
Paulus Cottrell says the cost of solar is an obstacle also, and you said, but with co-ops, that is bringing the price down. Yeah. Lauren Butcher says, "Thank you so much, Dr. Root, for a wonderful presentation." Inga Jones, "Fabulous," from Broward County. county resident, and yes, we want to hear, and yes, we want to hear your plastic talk. So
Okay,
time in the future, Terry, if you'd like to come back and give us your plastic talk, we'd love to hear it.
I'd love to.
Okay, that'd be wonderful.
Maybe I can do it in person.
Yeah, oh, that would be even better. Yes. That'd be fabulous, and I know that day will come. Rose Loff says thank you so much, and I think that's all for the comments. I hope I didn't miss any, and if I do, I apologize. Terry, I can't thank you enough for an incredible evening presentation. Thank you so much, and we will have you back for your plastic talk.
Yes, that's wonderful. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed this. It was really, I love talking to bird people because you really care. And it was just so much fun to get to know some of you in the first 15 minutes of the whole meeting. So thank you for including me and thank you for inviting me. And I didn't tell you, I wanted to tell you the thing that's in my background right behind me, those are jellyfish.
It's wonderful. Oh, and Wiley says in terms of the comment about population support plan, Planned Parenthood, talk to young folks about planning for small families. And Kay Gates, one more comment. Hope members will investigate One World Zero Waste store in Tequesta. I don't know about that store. The One World Zero Waste store in Tequesta. That's a great idea. I will investigate that. Thank you, Terry. And it was a
Thank
wonderful.
you all. I appreciate it very much. It's been wonderful. Okay, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
I'm afraid if I leave, everybody will be thrown out
No, you can leave the meeting without closing.
without throwing everybody. Okay, thank you all.
So everyone, thank you so much for coming this evening. It was an incredible presentation, and also Clive, thank you for the wonderful Bird of the Month presentation on the Roadrunner. Beep beep. We will see you all next month, Tuesday, February 2nd at 7 p.m. Simon Thompson, 10,000 Great Reasons to Travel, Birding Around the World. And one day we will be traveling again, and one day we will be birding around the world. So that's a great reason to attend on February 2nd at 7 p.m. We will see you all then. Have a great evening. Stay safe, be well. Happy New Year. And we'll see you on Tuesday again, February 2nd. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.